For this work, you're going to look at the mathematical possibility of vampires. You're going to consider the question of, can vampires really exist, and can the old myth be true? So by designing a spreadsheet, you're going to be able to look at the possibility. Now let's be clear, we're not talking about the new teenage vampires. We're talking about the old vampire myths. And in the old vampire myths, the vampire had to go out into the night. Sometimes he lived as a bat in the daytime, and he had to find a victim. Once he found a victim, he had to bite the victim within a week's time, or I'm not sure what would happen to him, but he would no longer be living. So each week, a vampire had to go out and seek a victim. The vampire needs to drink blood once a week. Now, once the vampire bit a victim,
they look at me so strangely.
Then that person became a vampire and then had to go out and find a new victim. So you're going to design a spreadsheet that starts with these assumptions, that somewhere there's one vampire that currently exists, and secondly, the vampire must bite someone and drink his or her blood once a week to survive, and finally, once a person is bitten by a vampire, he or she becomes a vampire. So the spreadsheet will look something like this. You'll have the week, and you'll have the number of people bitten, and then you'll have the number of vampires. And we will start with the week 0. That's very important to start with the week 0, because we're going to have a baseline week where there is one vampire somewhere, but he hasn't bitten anyone in that first week. And we're just going to play it out and look at the number of weeks, and you want to discover how many vampires there are after 35 weeks. So the first thing you'll have to do is label your Google Sheets. And then in cell A1, I'm going to write week. In cell B1, I'm going to make a column for the number of people bitten. And if I go between the two letters, I can make the column wider. In column C, I'm going to label it number of vampires. And that's going to be our vampire total. And again, I can do it. If I highlight the whole column, I can do text wrapping to make sure that they're going to fit. And also, I can center the text in there. So I'm going to start with a week 0. Remember, we want to have a baseline week where there's 0 people bitten, but there is one vampire, perhaps living in the deep, dark mountains of Transylvania. So in week 1, that one vampire is going to go out and bite a victim. And at the end of the week, there are going to be 2 vampires, the old vampire plus the person who was bitten and the new vampire. In week 2, those 2 vampires are going to go out and bite 2 people. At the end of that week, there's going to be 4 vampires, the 2 old vampires and the 2 new ones. In week 3, and I can label down to week 4 and label to week 5. And you're going to keep this spreadsheet going all the way down to week 35. So the question for you is, how many vampires are there at the end of week 35?